What was the name of your little lawn mowing company?
The Lawn Wranglers?
Blinded by the light, wrapped up like a douche, another runner in the night. Blinded by the light, wrapped up like a douche, another runner in the night. Blinded by the light, wrapped up like a douche.
Welcome to Wrangler Roundup, episode 19. And we have a very special guest with us today, Taylor Sowers, well known throughout Stark and Summit County. Before we get into some background on Taylor, I do want to say Wrangler Roundup podcast is brought to you by Alpha and Aloha Design. If you want any design on a race singlet, a t-shirt, they will do you up and they'll do it good. They're on Instagram and Facebook. So again, that's Alpha and Aloha Design. So Taylor has been running for 22 years. He began his running career during his years in high school and McDonald. That's down by Youngstown. Mm-hmm. And he competed in cross country while attending Mount Union. An avid runner, Taylor balances a family, a busy career as an educator with a rigorous training schedule. He's an early bird, gets up very early in the morning to get his miles in. And he's been a permanent fixture in the Canton area for the past several years. Welcome to the show, Taylor.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Taylor, I first met you, I remember vividly, it was, I think, 2018, the winter. I came down, was training, I think, for Boston Marathon in April. And I know Dan Hanna, Big Dan, was going for a BQ.
Yep.
And I think Ward Freeman was in there on that run for a little bit. And met you, and then we ran a couple times down there that winter. So.
Yeah, those were some good times.
Yeah, they were. And I've been wanting to get you here on the podcast, and here you are. So, Taylor, tell us a little bit about your introduction to running in high school.
Yeah, so I started off running for a very small school called McDonald, Ohio, McDonald High School. And we graduated about 76 kids my senior year, and that was one of the largest classes to go through at the time. And we had a cross-country coach by the name of Chris Roop, legendary coach, and he just developed runners, made them really good state runners, and it was just something that I wanted to be a part of. For me, I was actually a soccer player. I never had any really desire to run, but the high school that I went to conveniently did not have a soccer program, so I had to go to cross country. And I've been doing it ever since. I've enjoyed it, and he really made it kind of a love for running. He had us running 70 miles a week in high school, and I just fell in love with the long distance, and that's kind of what propelled me moving forward.
Did you do track and field at McDonald?
I did. I ran the 3200, the 1600, the 4x8, and sometimes the 4x4 if one of our friends decided to eat a piece of pizza beforehand. So for me, it was something that was definitely out of the ordinary, if you know what I mean. Going from, especially those high school runners, you all know that running the 3200 and then getting a very short break and trying to run as hard as you can for one more lap it's a challenge, but it's definitely something that always helps with your running.
Yeah, and that 400 is really a sprint. You're kind of out of your
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So what was your favorite distance?
So in high school, my sophomore year decided that I wanted to try everything, and that's what I did in middle school and also in ninth grade. And we ran everything from the 4x8, the mile, the 2 mile, sometimes the open 800, and obviously sometimes the 4x4. And I tried everything. I didn't really like any one of those one distances, but I found that there was an opening in the 3200. And for me, it was 8 laps around a track. Nobody wants to do it. I'm going to sign up and I'm going to do it, because if it's the longest, that's the one I want to go for. I'm a fairly consistent runner when it comes to pacing. I figured it's got to be the best thing for me. And so I signed up. I said, I'm going to run the 2 mile or the 3200. And that's what I did. And that's what I did from sophomore year on. And that was my main focus moving forward.
What were your times like?
So my best time in the 3200 was my senior year. It was my very last race. It was a 9:49 at the regional meet. And
In Division III, that was...
in Division III at
Yeah.
Navarre Fairless. And it was one of those races that I kind of knew going into it based on the field that was there that this was going to be my last race as a high school student. And for me, it was just something that was a little bit eye-opening because what do I do next? And I just wanted to run as hard as I could, try to get out as best as I can, and if I don't, I don't. But I ended up taking 6th place. I got outkicked by another athlete, and I just kind of gave up. I said, that's it. I don't really care anyway. Ran the fastest time I did, and that was pretty much it. That was the end of my high school career. Would I go back to running a 3,200 again? Probably. I actually want to compete against that time and see what I can do now, but there's not many 3,200 meter events on the track, so it makes it a little challenging.
Unless PLX, if you can get them, that was pretty popular this spring. They did that. track night.
I did see the track night, and I got highly encouraged
Were
by
you
some
there
of...
watching some of the events?
I didn't go to a single thing there,
I went
no.
and watched. It was pretty cool. So maybe we can get Nicole to put the 32 in for next year. They had the 16. So.
That is a shout out to Nicole. Like, if
Yeah.
you can get the 3,200, I will be signing up immediately.
There you go, Nicole.
So,
We'll bug her too on social media.
that's fine. I'm good with that.
That's good. All right, so Mount Union then.
Mm-hmm.
So did you run the full 4 years at Mount?
No. So I ran my freshman year of Mount Union, and I enjoyed it. It was definitely a transition, but there was something about it that I missed. There was a team atmosphere that was different than the high school that I went to. And it wasn't negative, it was just something that was different. And at the end of the season, I came home one weekend and I was talking to my dad, who's a fairly decent runner, and my mom, who was starting running. And I told them, I said, I don't think Division III cross country is for me, and I don't think I want to do track. And my dad, being the person that he is, always said, let running be the thing that promotes your health, not something that's going to be a detriment to you. And so from that moment on, I thought to myself, you know what, I got to do something that I enjoy, and I got to find something that I want to do. And so immediately at 18 years old, I said, I'm signing up for a marathon. I bypassed the whole half marathon, the 10K. I just said, forget it, I'm going right to the marathon. And so my Christmas present that year was that would have been the 2012 Cleveland Marathon. It was the Rite Aid Cleveland Marathon at the time.
And you were 18.
I was 18 years old. Yep, and I ran that in May, and a month later I became 19, and I did it again the following year.
What was
So-
your time the first?
It was actually my best time for about 12 years, and it was a 3:23:12, and I did what every runner does. I went out in 6 flat pace for your very first marathon at 18 years old, and I ran hard for the first 18 miles, and then I walked the next 8. And it was the last 8 miles were, it used to go, because every course changes, but it went alongside Lake Erie on a bike path. And I remember just walking the entire time thinking, why did I sign up for this? Why did I go for this? This isn't anything I should be doing. And I walked the rest of the way in, and I told my dad, I'm 23 minutes off of Boston by walking the last 8. Let's do it again. So within a few days after running that marathon, I signed up and I trained for it again. But it wasn't as good the next time around.
So you just kind of chipped away for the next 12 years then?
I did. So actually, my marathon times were never really impressive from my perspective. It was just something that I thought, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to keep training for it. And there was a time that I thought maybe I can run every single one in the state of Ohio. And then I thought maybe I can run one across the country in each state. Then I realized how much money that costs, and I said, no, I don't want to do that, and I don't want to give up all that time. I just want to do something that I enjoy. So for the next 10 years or so, I really just focused on running long, running consistent, and trying to get a time that I would be happy with. And the times never came. It was just something that I enjoyed.
But you had we'll get to that a little bit later, but you had a really solid marathon this past fall at the Haunted.
I did, yeah. Yeah, it was one of my favorite marathons I ever did.
Your first marathon where you went sub-3, what was that?
So the first one that I ran sub-3 at would have been the 2018 Columbus Marathon. and I ran a 2:56.
Close.
No, 2:58. I ran a 2:58. That way all you fact checkers can check that. But it was a 2:58. I remember that one.
And that would have been a BQ for you.
That was a BQ, yeah. And my coach at the time was one of my high school teammates. His name is Mitchell Thornton. If you're looking for a coach, he's a great person to reach out to. He's very knowledgeable. And I believe this upcoming year he's going to get his, he's doing all the world majors, so he's going to get his sixth star there.
What's he doing this year?
I think he has, it's either London or Berlin left. I think it's London. So he'll be there doing that. I'll be rooting for him the whole way.
Wow.
But he and I had a good conversation. He trained me through it. I went from running 50 Ks and trail races to, you know what, maybe I should try and go one more time at this marathon. And if I don't get it, then I'm just going to say forget it. I'm done. But I ran a 2:58, and at the time, Mitchell told me, who's been at Boston numerous times, that time is probably not good enough to run Boston. Because at the time, you needed anywhere between the 5 to 7 minute window. Yeah. And I thought to myself, I got to do all that training again. Like, I just did it, and I got to do it again. So I signed up for Hall of Fame, the Hall of Fame Marathon, the next 6 months later, and I ran a 2:55. It was a 2:55:20 something. And at that point, he called me and said, I think you're in. I think you're safe. Everything's good. Just sign up. So I signed up, and then the pandemic hit. So for me, it was something that was, like many of you out there, you don't know what to expect. What do you do now? I've trained so hard. What's going to happen now moving forward? And so for me, it was just something that, it was just another thing that came upon me that I had to go, okay, let's roll with it and just keep going. Mm-hmm. So that's how I've kind of gotten into the marathons and pushing through some of those darker times, I guess, you may say.
Yeah, and that's cool that you just kept, again, a lot of people assume that they're going to go into a marathon, they're going to do a training cycle, and, you know, they're going to meet with success. And obviously, you got to meet with a lot of failures before you meet with success. Failure is the best teacher, right?
Yep.
And that's awesome that you were able to chip away. And I mean, that you ran 40 last year?
So I ran a 2:48:48 at Haunted Forest.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was something that hurt, and it was really good that I got to do that.
Yeah, and that's a great feeling, because going from your first marathon, I'm sure in your 19-year-old mind, you probably like, there's no way on earth I can possibly run sub 3, let alone the 240s.
Yeah, when you think about it, it's 34 minutes faster, and that's a minute and a half per mile faster. So it was definitely something that I never fathomed, but running that race this past October was good. And honestly, I want to give a shout out to Iz Merkel and Nick Schweikert, because those two guys, they got me through some pretty bad times in that race. And
yeah, I saw you flying through there. I was at the water stop, and those guys were with you. You guys looked like you were hauling. I just saw Iz this morning on a run down the towpath, so that's awesome. You were talking about trails just a few minutes ago, and speaking of trails, the trail master, Anthony Velasco. So Anthony was with us last year, and he talked a lot about you in his interview. And of course, there's a relationship that you have, and I think it's a fascinating one, because he is so much older. And,
he is, yes.
Your realm is the roads, and he's trail, but you guys have this relationship. So tell us a little bit about how that came to be. Yeah,
so Tony and I never knew each other prior to, I want to say it's 2015. I could be wrong on that year, and Tony will be the first one to correct me. But in 2015, or whatever year it was, Tony and I met, along with a guy named Kevin Tubbs, on a bus. It was a charter bus that we took from the finish line for the Green Jewel to the starting line of Green Jewel. And so I think we finished in Brecksville somewhere, and we started up essentially near Lake Erie. Rocky River, I think, was the starting point. The race doesn't happen anymore, and it's kind of sad that it doesn't. So if Western Reserve Racing, if you're listening to this is a race that I am passionate about, and I will come back and do if you bring it back up. But so Tony and I were sitting in the bus, and we're just kind of shooting the breeze, talking about, what we're planning on doing. And I mentioned to Tony, I said, I'm just doing this race. It's not really anything that I'm looking to PR in. It's nothing that I'm, really training for. And Tony was like, I've done a couple of races, and, I'm just going to kind of see what happens. Well, Tony will describe this event as, he would say that he was the slower of the two, and I looked like I was the road master at the time. And it was anything but that. Tony was a very consistent runner, and he nailed it. He nailed the race perfectly. I myself did not nail it as much as I wanted to. So at the end of that race, Tony comes up to me along with a guy by the name of George Thalmus, who's also a very well-known runner in Summit County and also Cuyahoga County. And he told me, he said, why don't we get together and train through some of this stuff? We've got some ideas of things that we want to do. And I said, Tony, I live in Canton. I've got an hour drive, but I enjoy running these, so I'll come up and run with you. And so we started running it, him, me, and Kevin, and a couple other guys from time to time would go up and run. And one day I just told Tony, I think it was in September or maybe August, I said, Tony, why don't we get a group going on Facebook? I said, there's groups all over the place. So let's just get a group, put it on Facebook, and see who comes, because you never know. Mm-hmm. There's people that are training for Burning River. There's people that are training for any 50K that's going on the weekends. Let's just throw it together and see what happens. And so Tony's like, I don't really know what's going on with Facebook. I don't know how to do all that stuff. And I said, Tony, I can put it together for you. Don't worry. So I put it together. I came up with this name. We were on a run, and I said, why don't we just call ourselves Trail Enthusiasts?
And Trail Enthusiasts
for Burning River. And so, Tony's
100 mile.
And so Tony's like, why are we doing that? And I'm like, well, you always talk about these people that are out walking on the trails, and they're bird enthusiasts. Why don't we just call ourselves Trail Enthusiasts? Because that's really what we're doing. We're going around, we're watching, we're seeing what's going on, and we're having a lot of conversations. We're not pushing each other by any means. We're just running. And he's like, okay, sounds good. So we kept the name, everything was good. And all of a sudden, we start getting 10 people here, 10 people there, every single week. And I'm thinking to myself, this is really big. We made it big time. Mm-hmm. And at the time, there was a Crooked River trail running group, which I think still exists.
Thursday evenings they met.
Yeah, and they go out and they run their 5-8 miles at a time, and it's great, don't get me wrong. But I told Tony, I said, we have to differentiate ourselves. We have to find something that appeals to a larger crowd. And so we put in our description, we're here to train you to run an ultra. We're here to train you to run 100. And at the time, that was the limit. The 100 miles was the limit. And we just kept going every single weekend. How far are we going? Okay, we got a 20 miler. Okay, next week we got a 22. Okay, next week 24. And then I'm thinking to myself, I got to train for a 50, because if we're doing all this mileage, I might as well run a 50-mile race. Mm-hmm. So I told Tony, I said, why don't we train for a 50-miler? So we did. We trained for Burning River. He mentioned, I was listening to his podcast specifically, and how he gets a pacer for the whole thing because he's over a certain age. And he pretty much told me, he's like, yeah, well, I get a pacer the whole time, so you don't. So let's kind of see what happens, kind of jokingly. Mm-hmm. And I just told Tony, I said, use your pacer because I want you to. And so he had Ryan Kintz pacing him along with a few other people as well. And he ran a phenomenal race again. And I'm thinking to myself, what does this guy have that I don't have? I just can't figure it out. And so after the race, him and I were talking, and it was really just about pacing and fueling. And so really Tony's big thing with me is I learned so much more about not running than I did about running. I learned about pacing. I learned about fueling. I learned about not spending too much time at an aid station. I learned about just kind of that social atmosphere of whenever somebody's passing you, you talk to them, you latch onto them, and you keep going. None of that has anything to do with putting the miles in. Mm-hmm. It's all about the extra stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I just kept listening. Every single run we would do. What is he doing? What is he talking about? How can I get this going? And so I took all of that knowledge and said, I'm going to sign up for a 100-miler because I'm ready. I've done the mileage. I'm ready to go. So I signed up for the Mohican 100, and I never made it there. I never once even showed up. I had kind of a medical issue going on, and I just said, you know what? That's my limit. I don't think I can do a 100-miler. And my wife, who's going to be listening to this podcast, at some point is going to be extremely happy to hear that I'm probably never going to do a 100-miler. I've learned my limit. I'm okay with it. And that's when I really said, I think I need to go back to the roads. They're calling my name. I'm still young. Let me go back. But that transition never really happened. I never really got fast. I had to really focus on it. And so all of those things that Tony kept telling me, don't spend too much time at an aid station. Make sure you socialize with somebody that's coming up to you. Those were all key things that helped me thrive in the roads. And so I'm eternally grateful for his knowledge. And honestly, everybody in the trail enthusiast group, I apologize for never going, but they are awesome.
They're phenomenal, and I love the story. It's kind of like to use a pop culture reference, Yoda and Obi-Wan, the whole story and how much you're learning from the wise sage. And Tony is so unassuming in a lot of ways, but yeah, he's got so much knowledge. And just running up here through the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, when those enthusiasts come through on the weekend, it's like the Great March to the Sea. I mean, it's just legions coming down the trail, and you just gotta let them go. Like, okay, where's the caboose at? And they just keep coming, and they just keep on getting more people in. We got some guys in our group that run with them periodically, and they kind of tease us like, "You Wranglers have a weak reputation," because our Wednesday night runs are like 5 miles. I'm like, okay, whatever. But they have really thrived with Tony's guidance, and we had one guy complete his first 100-mile race, first attempt, and he didn't technically get the cutoff. He was just a little bit over, but still, I mean, that's a lot further than I'll ever run.
100%,
so,
yeah.
Hats off, to those ultra guys. They're something else, and to Tony, he's done a great job. But let's transition from Summit County up here, and let's go down to Stark County, because we always up here in Summit County, it's ACK Run. You win. And we have a very vibrant running community up here in Summit County. Can you tell us about the Canton running community? Because I've met some really awesome people in Canton through the running community. So what's it like down in Canton?
So in Stark County, it's kind of neat because we have 3 universities, the University of Mount Union, which is where I went, along with where Heath Goshorn went. And then there's Walsh University and also Malone University. And those 3 schools produce runners. I mean, they're well known Walsh is known for basketball, Malone's known for running. Mount Union, of course, is known for football and track, but they produce runners. And so anytime you want to get a run in, you can almost always find somebody that's going to run your pace. If you want to run 9-minute pace, I could probably tell you 100 people in Stark County that'll run that pace. If you want to run an 8-minute pace, I could probably tell you another 100 people that can run that pace. If you want to run 7-minute pace, I could probably find about 100 people that can do that as well. And so just having that understanding that there are a lot of groups that meet and do a lot of different times, it's helpful. It's really helpful. It's not like there's this one group and that's the only group that you can go to get a long run in, or even just a regular run in. I personally like to run in the middle of the night. That's my go-to. I don't like running on the roads with cars. It's just always been a good thing for me. And so I started a thing where we meet up at anywhere between 3:30 in the morning and 4 in the morning, and we just go. We all wake up and just go. And it's been good because we have probably about 10 or 15 people that can run with us at any given point. And some people filter in, some people filter out. It's whatever. It's early. It's a lot to ask of people.
Who are some of the frequent flyers in that early group down there?
So Ward Freeman is a frequent flyer. Jim Cheney is a frequent flyer. A girl by the name of Heidi Steiner is a frequent flyer. And then there's me, Jesse Adams.
Oh, Jesse. Just saw him yesterday at Port Trucker.
Oh, yeah. He nailed it. 17:20. That guy's flying. He's going to have a good fall this year, and I can't wait to talk about that in a little bit. But So we have those individuals, and then there's people that come in and out from time to time, depending upon what they're training for. And so there's a core nucleus of us, and then we kind of branch out beyond that. But we'll go anywhere between 10 miles on a normal day to we can go up to 16 and knock that out before most people even get out of bed that morning. But if you want to sleep in, there's other groups that'll meet with you too. So
We've got a group in Akron called the FEEGS, the Fairlawn Early Group, and it sounds like you guys are earlier than the FEEGS.
we are, and I got a story about that. So Jim Chaney was part of that group. The FEEGS, and I think he was part of that group, so he was, yeah. He may correct me. But so he said that he moved down to Stark County because he was getting ready to direct the Hall of Fame Marathon. And so I texted him immediately and said, listen, I got this group, I want to start it, can we meet at 4 a.m.? And he was like, yeah, that's fine. Typically meet at that time for the Akron group, I think at 4:30 or 5 o'clock. So 4 won't be too bad because then he doesn't have to drive anywhere. It's ready to go. Well, then as time went on, that time got pushed back earlier and earlier and earlier. And Jim eventually got to the point where he just said, you guys are now going earlier than I ever went. And I drove up to Akron. So, it's one of those things that we do pride ourselves on getting out early, but we pride ourselves really of hitting the miles and making sure that we get what we need to that day in order to be successful in our training.
Wow, I got up at 5 today and started at 5:30, and I thought that was early.
I think at 5:30 today I was done with my run.
There you go.
So
you talked a little bit about your 2:48 last year at the Haunted, and you mentioned before we started filming about goals for this fall. So do you want to talk a little bit about last year and what you're looking to do this year at the Haunted?
So I want to preface by saying that I am going to run the Akron Marathon. So if the weather is really good, then my plans will shift slightly. Last year at Akron, I ran a 2:52, and then Haunted Forest ran a 2:48. And both experiences were great, and I never expected to run the time that I did at Akron. But my experience from Haunted Forest was I'm going out on a towpath. There's not going to be the crowd support. There's not going to be the water at every mile. There's not going to be just that pre-race energy that you need. It's just I need to go out and I need to get the job done. And so that was what I thrived on. In high school, I loved that. I don't like the big races. I like the ones where nobody's watching, go get it done. And so last year I had asked, as I mentioned before, Iz Merkel and Nick Schweikert to pace me. Nick had just run the Youngstown Marathon and won it the week before. And I asked him on Monday, I said, can you be a second pacer for me? And he said, sure, what pace are you running? I said, sub 250. I don't care if it's 249.59 or if it's 240.01. It's got to be under 250. And he said, yeah, I think I can make that happen. Let me let you know by Wednesday. Tuesday morning rolls around. He says he's in, and then I start getting pre-race jitters, just like everybody gets before that marathon where, oh man, I don't know if I could do this right now. Like, my training was good, but I just don't know if I have it in me to do this. And so both Iz and Nick, I sent them a group text, and I just said, I don't know if it's going to happen. And they said, stop with that talk. We're going out and we're going to do it. So I'm like, okay. So we get to the race day, and both of them are parked right next to me, and they just say, so are you ready to go? And I said, yeah. They're like, come on, we're going to do a warm-up. I'm like, a warm-up for a marathon? Like, how far are we going? And normally I'm good with a half mile, maybe even a quarter mile, depending upon what it is, or even up to a mile. And they said, well, let's just go out for a mile and come back. I'm like, out for a mile? Are you kidding me? Before I'm going to run as hard as I can? And it was the best thing that I ever did, because I got the lay of the land, which I knew what it was, but I wanted to see what I was getting myself into. And they just talked the whole time. And it was something that I was like, okay, so they're just easing my butterflies in my stomach, and we're going to go out and try to do this. So we get to the starting line. I click on my watch. We're a half mile into the race, and I looked at Iz and I said, crap. And he said, what? I said, I didn't start my workout for my run, because I set it so that I would try to get under a 250. And he's like, well, I guess we're going to fly by the seat of our pants then, and we're going to just do this. And I'm like, well, that's never worked for me. So we'll see what happens. And so for me, it was just something that I had to just put that aside and run consistent. And I remember you saying that you had saw me at one of the aid stations. I want to say it was mile 5 or so.
It was, and then you guys looped back around. It was
Right.
later.
Like 10-ish.
Yeah.
And I do remember seeing Larry, and I'm thinking to myself, why isn't he out here running? He should be out here running. And so when we came by the second time, I made sure to, scream at the lawn Wranglers and try to get some energy going because there was none out there. And again, I was perfectly okay with that. I knew what I was getting myself into, but just having that energy with at least somebody familiar who knows me is definitely something that is welcomed. And so both the two guys, we ran through the first, probably 14, 15 miles at like a 6:15, 6:20 pace. And I thought to myself, there's no way I'm going to hold this. There's no way I can do this. And I started telling Iz and Nick both a story. I said, I think we're at mile 17 or 18, getting ready to make the turnaround. And I just told them, I said, guys, it's been a real pleasure. I enjoyed running with you. You two are the two guys that I looked up to when I was trying to get myself to run fast because you two are nailing it every single week. I said, but I don't think I have this in me. I don't think I can do this. And both of them turned their heads because they were just like a step or two ahead of me. They turned their heads and said, let's pick it up. I'm like, pick it up? Are you kidding me? I can't pick it up. I'm hurting right now. And so they said, well, put some fuel in your belly, get some water at the next aid station, and we're going to run sub 6:30 the rest of the way back. I'm like, sub 6:30? I'm struggling to hold a 6:28. Like, how can I run faster? And so we get to mile 22, 23. There's nobody there. There's people that are coming back, but it's very thin. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, guys, I don't think I can do this. I got 3 more miles to go. And I started to feel the point where it was definitely a mental point. And physically, I was thinking, there's no way I can do this. I ran a 6:45 mile for mile 24, and I told Iz and Nick, I'm done. I have nothing left. And I'll never forget Iz looking at me saying, give me one more surge, just one more. And so I did, and we made that mile a 6:30 mile at mile 25. It wasn't anything that was fast, but I was still on pace. Mm-hmm. And I looked at my watch and I thought to myself, I have 12 minutes to get to this finish line, to break 250. Right. I think I can do it. So I started picking it up again, and my groin tightened up. And I thought, son of a gun, I'm going to let this hurt for the last mile, and it's going to suck. Or I'm going to walk, and I'm just going to say, forget it. It's fine. So the walking piece in my mind lasted about 2 steps. Because Nick said, I just ran a marathon last weekend. I'm not coming 25 miles for you to bail out on the last mile. I'm like, well, what do I do? And they said, just take another fuel. And I'm thinking about this while I'm running the whole time, like, oh my gosh, my groin is hurting. And so...
Yeah, because that's something that is beyond your...
You can't do anything about it.
You can't, yeah.
There's nothing you can do.
If you spasm or if you tighten up like that to a point where it feel like it might tear, you're like, what do I do?
Yeah. And if it tears, you're done.
Yeah.
You are absolutely done. And so Iz looked at me and said, and it was probably the best thing he's ever told me, no offense, but he said, put in a gel right now, just put in a gel. I said, Iz, we got 1 mile left. That gel is gonna not even hit my belly before we get to the finish line. He's like, just put in a gel. Like, okay, I put in the gel, instantly everything went away. Instantly. I was like, is this some guru? Is he a doctor? How does he know this stuff? And so I picked it up. We went through the woods, and I remember seeing the bridge by Canal Fulton. And if you know the bridge that I'm talking about, you cross the road and there's the bridge. And I looked at my watch and I thought, son of a gun, these guys got me to do it. So I just floored it all the way in, and I made that right-hand turn. I saw Jim. Jim was happy that he could tell I was going to do it. I crossed the line, turned off my watch, and basically said, I don't know if I could do that again. And Iz and Nick both looked at me and said, if you're ready to do it again, let's go. We can go do it again.
Awesome. Yeah.
So coming into this year, I've asked both of them to pace me. They've got some running calendars to work out, and so I'm not sure if they're going to pace me yet. I mean, Nick told me the week before, so I'm assuming that maybe he'll jump in. But as of right now, I have Tony Migliozzi that's going to pace me for this upcoming Haunted Forest Marathon. And we have a goal right now, and we're going to kind of leave it at that for now, and we'll see what happens. But it will be a PR, hopefully.
That's great. That's a great story. I think it's really cool, too, within the running community. These are Summit County guys. You're a Stark County guy. It's not like you run with them on a regular basis, but just being able to reach out to runners within the community, and they're like, yep, we'll be there, and we're going to get you through it.
And I even told both of them, I said, listen, I will repay you. If you want to do an ultra, I'll pay you for that, because they're going to run slower. So hopefully, but they're going to run at a much slower pace, so I can help with them in that aspect. So we'll see what happens. Well,
best of luck. I'm sure I'll see you there. I don't know if I'll be volunteering or running, but
you'll be running. You're running this time.
We'll see. So, Taylor, we share a lot in common. We both love running. We're both in education. We're both husbands and fathers. What is it like balancing? And you have a younger family. My daughter's 17. You have younger children. What's that like, balancing a young family and your career and the rigorous training schedule? That's a lot.
Yeah, so I have, for those of you who don't know, I have a 6-year-old and a 5-month-old. Depending upon when the podcast goes out, she may be 6 months, but she's definitely younger, and my son's also younger as well. And the one thing that I've always kept in the back of my mind is the same thing that my dad told me, and it's, if you are planning to do running, make sure it's about your health. Make sure you're doing it to promote something. And my son has definitely taken into it. He's wanting to do races, and I'm kind of the dad who's pumping the brakes, like, nope, we're not doing that yet. We're not doing a 5K. You're only 6. We're not we're not going in that direction just yet. But having the kids races, the half miles, the miles, they're great. I'll sign him up for those anytime he wants to do them. But I'm also the guy that's not going to push it to him. And the same thing with my daughter when she gets to that point. If they want to run, great. If they don't, that's fine too. I'll support them in anything they do. And so for me, just having that sense of, I'm not going to be the father that's going to push this on you. If you want to do it, great, go for it. It has really resonated with me at this point. But knowing so, I still want to reach my goals. I still have things that I want to do before I get to the point where maybe I'm not running anymore. And so for me, it's just been get out and go early in the morning, and then have time for family afterwards. I don't try to prioritize running. I just try to make it so if I want to do it, I want to do it while everybody's sleeping. And so that way, when everybody wakes up, I come home, we can still spend time together. As a teacher, it's great because I get everything done before I run. And I get all my running done before I go into school, so that I can spend most of the day just focusing on school, and when school's over, then I can focus on family. But yeah, for me, it's the rigorous training schedule is really just about focusing on what goals I have and what races I want to accomplish them at. They generally say that Akron's not one of those places that you want to try to shoot for a PR, but every time I do it, I almost PR. So I'm going to just keep that kind of tucked in the back of my mind and keep up with the rigorous schedule and just go after it. I think that's kind of the mindset you have to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Hats off to you being able to consistently run with a young family. I know that's got to be difficult. I did not. I was coaching and teaching, and I only had one. But unlike you, and I see now why you get up so early in the morning, because I can understand that committing to your family, you don't want to take time out of that to go out and an hour, 2 hours running. Yeah, so if it's done when everyone else is sleeping,
it's almost like they never knew I was gone.
Exactly. So you mentioned in the article that came out, it was a great article, by the way, just about 2 weeks ago. That was in the Canton Repository, is that right?
I was in the Plain Township Community Newsletter.
Got you.
Yep.
And you mentioned your friend George in the article. Can you tell us a little bit about your relationship and his impact on your running?
Sure. So George was my best friend from, probably the time that we were in Little League baseball. He went to McDonald as well. I knew his family very well. But he was definitely kind of the main person that got me to really like sports. My dad was definitely there. My mom was there. My twin sister was there. They all got me to really like sports. But George was kind of like that brother that I never had. And we always joke that him and I both look like we could be twins. And we always did everything together, going from shopping at our local mall at the Eastwood Mall to just picking up a basketball and saying, let's play some basketball. That relationship continued from the time that we were in middle school, high school, to the time we went to college. He was the main reason I went to Mount Union, and really the main reason why I even considered looking at Mount Union, to be honest. But when I went there, I enjoyed it, I loved it, and so I would see him from time to time. And then afterwards, after college was over, him and I really became even closer. We were the two type of guys that would just go out and just do what any other 21, 22-year-old guy would do. Like, hey, there's a concert, let's go. Hey, there's, this special at this local bar, let's go. Let's just go hang out with these other people. And so we just kind of, shot the breeze for the next couple of months. And he was definitely one of the guys that I really looked up to with everything that he did. And at one point, he mentioned to me that he was going to Disney to work. He was going to do the Disney program down there for a year. And I said, that's great. I'm glad that you got a job after college, and just keep going, enjoy doing what you're doing. And he's definitely a Disney person. And so at that point, he mentioned to me that he was on their Disney Facebook page or something, and he met this girl named Carrie. And we were sitting at the bar. Him and I probably each had a drink or two. And I wasn't driving, one of our other friends was. But he had mentioned to me that he was seeing, at least talking to this person, and she found him attractive. And I'm like, no, let me see this picture. So he showed me the picture, and I said, okay. I said, George, here's what's going to happen. You're going to end up marrying her. I said, I don't know where she's from. I don't know who she is, but I have this feeling that you're going to marry her. And so he's like, no, that's too early. You're not, whatever. And so he went to Disney. Within 6 months, they started dating. The two of them were dating pretty regularly, and I had talked to him every week, and he said, she's from California. And I said, what part of California? He's like, San Francisco. I'm like, are you gonna move out there, like, afterwards? And he's like, well, if there's a job opportunity, then I'm going to. Mm-hmm. And so he ended up working out there in a Benjamin Moore paint shop, which is actually the paint shop that his wife, Carrie, her dad, Bob, owned. And so they lived out there, they were dating, and then they got engaged. And he called me the day they got engaged, and I said, I told you that was gonna happen. So I was in his wedding, I was his best man. I went out there a week before the wedding. I met Carrie for the first time. She was definitely perfect for George, everything about him. They had a daughter, Ellie, who was just about Carter's age, maybe a little bit older, and a couple years into their marriage, he passed away, just unexpectedly. And so that really hit home with me to the point where I got to do something. I got to do something that I am passionate about. I got to do something to support him and his family through this grieving process. And so for me, it was a time for me to sit back and reflect, what can I do that we're never going to bring him back. I know that we're not going to bring him back, but what can I do to keep his memory alive? And the two things that we always had in common were running and sports. And I thought to myself, I'm going to go run a marathon for him. I'm going to run it as hard as I can. And that was the one I did Columbus in the 2:58. I wore a Donate Life jersey because he had donated his body to several individuals who can now see, who can now hear, and definitely have some different things that help them. And I thought to myself, you know what? He did so much for so many other people. The least I can do is run in his honor. And so anytime there's a Donate Life event, whether it be the 5K at Blossom or whether it just be a race and I'm going to throw on a Donate Life jersey, that's the reason why I do it. I do it for him. And it has really allowed me to kind of focus on my running to the point where if I'm putting on a Donate Life jersey, I'm going to run it as hard as I can. If I don't put on that jersey, then count me out. I'm not going to run it hard. Like maybe my mind's not there, maybe, whatever it may be, but it seems like the end of June every year it's a tough time for me. And so I kind of let that go, and I let it sit for a little bit, and then okay, time to focus, time to get back at it. So his passing has been definitely a challenge for me. Even so, this year, this was 5 years.
How old was he when he passed?
He was around 30.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think he was 29, maybe 30. But it scared me to the point where, I had to make some changes to my life, and good changes for me, but it was an unfortunate event with him.
Yeah. Tomorrow's not guaranteed, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes when you lose someone that's very close to you, it does make you just reconsider everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm sorry, but it sounds like, and you kind of like, you look at things, and obviously even through tragic circumstances, sometimes you can find the positive, but that's a really just the story of you guys growing up together, and sharing your passion for running and sports, and I'm sure he lives on with you. And
oh yeah,
that's a good thing.
He was actually the main reason why I went back to school to become a counselor. So that was kind of the main push, and
so he lives on through you.
Yeah, he's going to for a while.
That's good. As long as you're here.
As long as I'm here. Well, even after I'm here, he's still going to live
and you
on.
impact students, and
yep.
Through your impact, he's going to live on longer down the road. So
absolutely.
So it seems, because the next question I had was about, kind of going through a stretch of dark times. I think every runner goes through that stretch, whether it's due to injury or just something you're dealing with emotionally. Have there been any instances where you could reflect on it was really a dark stretch for you, where you really had to labor through it? Yeah,
so pretty much every marathon cycle I go through a stretch of dark times. Excuse me. It's definitely one that you really have to consider, do I have the time to do this? Do I have the energy to do this? And if I don't, then I'm going to go through that dark time. And for me, it's just been something that I definitely go through those dark times. I go through I really don't want to wake up and run. I really don't want to do this workout. I really don't want to do a long run. But the moment you finish, you're like, boy, I'm glad I did that.
Yeah.
And I think everybody can relate to that. Like, wow, that was great. Like seeing that sunrise at the very end of my run, that was awesome. But definitely there are some pieces of that time that it's questionable, where you're really having to dig deep. And honestly, for me, it's been more of a time where I can go, you know what, I'm going to experience this during a marathon, so let's work through it right now. And so that's kind of been my go-to. There have been some days, especially this past training cycle, that I'm like, I don't have it in me. I don't think I can do it. And I've actually allowed myself to say, okay, I'm taking a step back. I'm not going to do the workout today. We'll just push it off to the side. We'll try something the next day and see what happens. And I don't know how that's going to work yet. We'll wait and see, but it's definitely been something that I've had to learn. And I think as most runners, we get stubborn. We want to follow a plan. We want to make sure we execute it right, because if I do X, Y, Z, then I will get what I want to get. And that's not always the case. It's not always black and white like that. Sometimes you have to really just listen to your body. I mean, I went through a streak of running every day for 3 years where there was no days off. Negative 30-degree weather, yeah, I'm out there. Thunderstorms, I'll be out there. Hey, there's lightning that's happening, I'll still be out there. And so I've had to teach my body to say, okay, now's the time I need to take a break. I need that mental break. And so I've been fighting a lot of the mental components to that, but injury-wise, I hope this is wood. I've never been injured. I've never had any injury to my body, so I'm hoping to keep that going strong.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
Especially the amount of miles you put in.
Yeah.
That is fascinating. Yeah. So you do a lot of preventative exercises, CrossFit, strengthening.
Judging by my body, I don't do too much CrossFit, but
cycling.
So in the past, I've done some cycling. I just bought myself an indoor trainer bike, which I plan to use more frequently in the winter time. it's just too nice right now. I can't say I'm going to go sit in the basement and pedal for the next hour. But no, the only thing I honestly do is I've started a push-up routine. I've never done this before, and I'm just, on the first day of the month, you do 1. On the last day of the month, you do whatever day that is, 30 or whatever, and you just increase all the way to that day. When you get to the next month, you start at 1 again, and you just keep going. But other than that, I mean, just lifting my kids, running around with my kids, that's all I do. I don't like to, I've never been one that says, I need to stretch. I need to, like, boy, I really need to do these plyometrics. I really need to, it's never been ingrained to me since high school, and I've just never taken to it.
Yeah, and I think you have to get injured before
That clicks.
Yeah, it clicks. Because I didn't get back to running regularly until I was probably 45. My first injury was an IT band issue I had, and like you, I never did anything preventative. And since then, I've tried to stay on top of things. And again, I think also as you grow older, too, things don't recover as fast. But
I've noticed that. Yes.
But that's awesome, and I hope that you continue on that path, because that can really just disrupt training and just I think emotionally it's tough, because we want to get out and run, and we want to get out what we love to do. Even if it's just going out there for a jog and being out in nature, and when you're injured, you just can't. It really does affect you emotionally.
Oh, 100%. And I've noticed that, like, whenever I start getting to the point where, like, I can tell my body's getting run down, then, like, if I'm hammering the roads for long stretches on end, then I'll go hit a towpath, and I'll just say, okay, switch, time to go to the towpath. And I do that for a couple of days, and then I go back to the roads, and I'm back at it again. Once training's over, I'm going to hit the trails, and I'm going to see, okay, let's see what happens, and just kind of go. And I think that's been part of my success, is you're not running the same terrain every single
you're not
time.
Pounding the same.
Right. And just for me, it's just been something that I've taken accustomed to, and I've just said that's just how my body is. I just need to go out and run. I need to do this.
Yeah.
So,
do you have a favorite racing memory or moment? I'm guessing it may be that Haunted Marathon. It sounds like that's where you had to dig deep and.
yeah, that was a pretty good one. I've actually had, I would say, probably 2 other ones. Well, probably 3 other ones. I don't know how many high schoolers listen to this podcast. I truly don't. I don't know who listens to this podcast, but I did a race. It was my junior year it was my senior year. It was up in Medina. And they had a 5K. It was part of their Medina festival. And it was pouring down rain the whole time. And I thought to myself, we're going to run a 5K on this? Like, of all days? It's muddy as heck. And my one friend, who was my teammate, I was like, he's going to win the race. Like, we entered the Division II race. And we were a small Division III school. And I thought, there's no way we're going to, as a team, we can't win this race. But I said, let's throw our name in the hat. Let's see what happens. So we get to the race. We go the first mile, and my teammate Joey was running very well, but I was a little bit behind. And there was another kid that was in between us from a different school. And I just thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to run hard. I'm just going to see what happens. I don't know what's going to happen. Let's just go. Let's see what happens. So I ended up picking it up. I caught up to this second place kid in the second mile. And after that second place mile, or in the second mile, I thought to myself, let's run hard again. Let's just see what happens. So I took off even faster, and I caught my teammate Joey, and I just laid on the gas the whole way. And you used to run this little loop around their elementary school. You go back into the woods, and then you would turn left and make this kind of turn back to where you came, and that's when you'd go into the finish. So nobody saw you because everybody was at the finish line. So I remember my dad and my mom and my sister were all standing next to each other at that turn, and they saw me come out of the woods looking like I was, from what they say, I was looking like I was possessed, like, because I was running so hard. And I got to the finish line, and my dad's just like, come on, he's right behind you, he's right behind you. I'm like, hauling as much as I can. and I crossed the finish line. It was the first time I had ever won a race in my junior year, maybe senior year. And from that moment on, I kind of thought to myself, I can do this. I know I can do this. And I looked back, there was nobody around me. There was nobody close to me, even though they were telling me, he's right behind you. But I never looked back. It's just a custom I've learned. Don't ever look back. Just keep going. Just keep plowing forward. So that was one of my favorite memories for an individual sake.
It's funny that that's a high school memory too.
It is. It
Yeah,
is.
you've run Boston. You've
That would
laid
be,
down
that's,
some solid.
that's definitely my
marathon
post.
times. That's cool though.
Oh, it's so
Yeah.
cool. But then one of my other favorite memories, and it's also as a high school runner, I have a lot of high school good memories. We ran Tiffin, the Tiffin Carnival
Out
in the
west.
middle of, out west, in the middle of September. And our coach told us, we're not entering the Division III race. And I said, Coach, we're a Division III school. We have to enter the Division III race. No, that race starts at 8. Unless you want to leave at 3 in the morning from McDonald, we're not allowed to get a hotel the night before. So if you all want to leave at 3 a.m., I'm all for it. Let's do
The
it.
35-year-old Taylor would say, "Yeah, let's." leave it.
100%. I'd be like, yeah, let's do it. But he's like, let's just enter the Division II race and let's just see if we can do something. So I'm like, okay. So this is my sophomore year. It was the last year that we had gone at the time. And we enter the race, and he put 6 of us in this race because we didn't know who our 7th runner was. You need 5 to score, 6 for a tiebreaker. And so our coach was like, let's just see what happens. We'll put 6 in. There were 4 seniors and there were 2 sophomores. Let's just see what happens. And so my teammate, Joey, who I'd mentioned just previously, at the time, he was our number 1 runner. Then there were 4 seniors, and then there was me as the 6th runner. In my freshman year, didn't know a thing about running. I just went, I think my best time was maybe 19 minutes, maybe 18:30 if I was lucky, which was good. But for our high school, that was, well, you're about number 12. Like, that's just how it was. So I didn't take it seriously until my sophomore year. So our sophomore year rolls around. We started the race with about 500 other people. It's like the size of Boardman. And I'm like, this is a lot of people. And I'm looking at all these other schools that we had never run against. I don't know what they look like. I don't know how fast they are. And my coach just told me before the race, you're our 6th runner. Go out and beat everybody's 6th. And I said, okay, I can do that. So he would physically look at the race. And during the race, I don't know how he does it. He has no paper. And he's just like, there's their 1st, there's their 2nd, go get them. He's like a Rain Man. So I just thought to myself, let's just see what happens. So we come out of the gate, and we're getting ready to make the first right-hand turn. And there's this massive tree. And this tree had to be 4 or 5 feet wide, just huge. And one of the individuals who was running next to me is running, and all of a sudden just throws me into the tree. And I go face first into the tree. I'm like, what? This is like my first Tiffin experience. So I come out of that tree, and I'm thinking to myself, I see the guy that did it. I see him because he's laughing. So I just took off. I was like, I'm just gonna run him into the ground, like just pass him and just keep going. Ended up, our number 1 runner ran a 17:07. I was the number 6 runner, and I ran a 17:27. We had 20 seconds between all of us. We ended up winning that race, the Division II race. And this lady came up to us. I'll never forget her, but I don't remember where she's from. Somewhere out in the western side of the state. And she comes over to us and she goes, I'm picking you guys to win the Division II state meet. I said, that's great. We're Division III. We don't race Division II. She's like, well, then I'm picking you guys to win the Division III state meet. So we ended up winning Division III state in 2004.
That was my question. Wow.
Yeah, and we won by, I think, 20 points or 30 points or something. It was a pretty big spread. But I learned that I cannot eat waffles before you run a race, so I learned a lot from that. But no, honestly, probably my favorite racing memory was finishing Boston on Boylston Street.
That was the morning I saw you.
Yeah. I was like, come on, Larry, let's get on the bus. I got to wait a little bit. Okay, that's fine.
That was a good day, though. We had a good day that day.
Yeah.
There's nothing like turning that corner and you just see this sea of people, and they don't even know you. They're just cheering for you.
It was one. I told my wife it was one of the only times while I was running that I actually cried. because it's that emotional. And if any of you out there listening are thinking to yourself, I really want to run Boston, I'm telling you, you will enjoy it. Whether the weather is good, whether the weather's bad, you will enjoy it, and it will definitely make you a runner.
Yeah. You gonna run again this year?
That's the plan. That's the plan for next April.
Plan on seeing you there.
Good. Good. Maybe we'll go to the
As long
Red
as I'm
Sox
healthy.
game.
Yeah, that would be cool. We got a couple Wranglers actually who qualified. Alec Klein's going to be there.
Good.
And another girl in our club, Megan Kane, first time. So we're going to have about 3 or 4 of us there. So
You got to do the challenge, though. There's a fun challenge you got to do if you do Boston.
what is it?
So there's 2 challenges. I haven't done the first one, but you got to do the second one. You got to run Boston on Monday and then run another marathon next Sunday.
yeah. I saw you at Canton after. I'm like,
Yeah.
what are you doing running a marathon?
You gotta run the marathon.
I could barely walk.
Let me tell you, after I think it was the 25th mile is when I finally said, you know what, I'm going to walk.
What did you run that day?
I ran a 3:13.
Okay.
And I thought to myself, I'm going to walk. And this guy came up to me and said, you can't walk now. You're on mile 25. I said, yeah, that's mile 51 of racing in a week.
Yeah.
So I am going to walk.
Yeah. That's funny because, man, Boston's a tough course.
It is.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's deceiving because you start going downhill, but man, it beats your quads up, and
There's a key to
Yeah.
it, though. You have to go run the next day. You have to physically make yourself run. And so I ran in MIT area because it's kind of hilly over there.
yeah. The 2 times I ran, I was in better. When I talk about injury wise, my first Boston, I had an IT band issue, so I could barely run 2 miles through most of March without IT, severe
Yeah.
pain in my knees. So my plan was to walk, jog it, which I did, but I was hobbling the next day, which, as you said, Boston is just the experience. So
Yeah.
I told my wife, I said, I may not finish this thing. I don't know, because I had not run more than 2 miles throughout all of March, and I was hit with IT in February. So I told her I have no idea what's going to happen, but yeah, I was able to muscle through it, but I couldn't run the next day.
Yeah.
The time I saw you, though, I was in much better shape the day after. So this time, I'm going to.
Yeah, we got to go to Cheers afterwards.
Oh, I went there the first time I was there.
Yeah, you got to go to
Yeah,
Cheers where
okay.
everybody knows your name.
All right, well, you will plan it.
I've already I'm ready to go.
All right, then it's there. All right, rapid fire roundup, Taylor. So these are just fast questions.
Oh, boy.
First thing that comes to your mind, I have a button with a shocker on your seat. So if you elaborate, I'm hitting that button.
Please do.
So what are your go-to shoes?
It would be the Brooks Hyperion Tempo for training day, and Jesse Adams got me a pair of Vaporflies, so we're testing those out as well.
Awesome. What is your favorite pre-race meal?
Please elaborate. Is that night before or is that day of?
Let's go night before.
Night before, pizza. 100%. Large
go.
pizza by myself.
Let's go morning.
Half a banana. That's all.
And music or no music running? I think I know the answer.
What do you think the answer is?
No music.
It depends on the day. If it's winter, I put music in. If it's not winter, I don't put music in.
Top 3 running songs.
Oh, boy. What are your top 3 while I think about it?
That's a good question. Only the Young, Journey, just because it was in the soundtrack to that wrestling movie back in the 80s. Roadrunner.
Is that indicative of
Modern
Akron?
Lovers. What's that?
Is that indicative of Akron, Roadrunner?
No, it's just it was a punk song back in the 70s. This band called Modern Lovers.
like the Misfits? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and it's really, look it up. It's good.
I
It's a good
listen to
tune.
punk. I love it.
Yeah, and man, there's so many other running songs out there. You got me, Taylor. I'm the one asking the questions here.
Yes.
So I'll have to think about the third one, but
Okay,
Oh
so
no,
go
Long
for it.
Distance Runner by Fugazi. And if
Oh,
you
that's a
don't
good-
know that
I
song,
do know that one. I do
that's
know
an
that
awesome
one.
song.
Yeah.
It's more poetry than a song, but
That's
the
okay.
lyrics are really cool.
So I'm the type of person, and I'm going to have to elaborate. I'm sorry. You did, so I feel like I got the non-buzzer question here. I like, when you look at running songs, I like anything by U2 because you put it on and it's calming. I don't like, I enjoy the pumping up music, but I also like the calming one. And if you're running a marathon, doing the pumping up, Give me
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Give me that the last like 8 miles.
Yeah.
But I do like, and this is kudos to Akron, 100%. Thunderstruck. Whenever that starts getting played, I'm all for it. And I don't know the name of the song, but it's the theme song for the Cavaliers when they come out.
I don't know it.
Because Akron plays it right before the race.
Do they?
They do that, and I think they also play Black Keys, so I would go with that too.
Okay.
So I'm giving you 4.
All right. Columbus Marathon.
Or maybe Columbus does Thunderstruck.
Well, they do. But
Maybe
I
it's
love once the race starts in Columbus, you're running that first half mile, and it's just blaring on both sides speakers. It's Born to Run.
Okay,
Bruce
yeah.
Springsteen, and that's a pretty cool feeling kind of coming through there. But you're right, like music that's too hype, you don't want to go blazing that first mile,
No.
like, and then you're like,
You do that
dying.
for a 5K, I'll
Yeah.
100% support you. But
Yeah.
honestly, if any, and this is kudos and shout outs to all the bands that play during any of the events. If you're playing music, I'm listening. I'm taking it all in.
Yeah.
Because whatever you're playing, I'm going to listen to it. Even those high school bands, I love it. It's awesome.
Favorite local running spot?
Whew. If I have to give you one key one, it's going to be Mohican. That's my favorite. But a quick second would be Cuyahoga Valley.
Favorite race?
High school marathon, what are we talking? Because I need specifics.
Let's go favorite marathon.
Favorite Boston. Nothing compares.
Okay. Longest distance?
That I've run? 50. I've run from Akron to Cleveland. Cleveland, Akron. Old Burning River.
A lot of people who come on here for some reason don't watch sports movies. I don't know why, but do you have a favorite sports movie that really gets you like excited?
Well,
Inspired.
I do want to give a quick shout out. Can I elaborate?
Sure.
Okay, I want to give a quick shout out. Last podcast was Heath, and he mentioned Draft Day. Or no, not Draft Day, I'm sorry. He mentioned Moneyball.
Moneyball, yeah.
And I thought to myself, I'm like, I've seen that movie. And I don't think I would consider that a sports movie, even though it is.
Yeah.
But honestly, that's a great one. But my favorite sports movie, I'm going to go Disney. I'm going to go a Disney movie. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
They put a lot of, they didn't do the one about the cross country
Yes,
school.
McFarland USA.
McFarland USA, that's a great
Yep,
movie.
that's one I'm going with.
Yeah, and that's a great story. I don't know if you've ever looked up some of the footage on YouTube of the runners, the
Yep.
actual coach. Yeah,
Yep.
awesome movie. And this is probably the most important question. Favorite lawn and garden tool?
Chainsaw, 100%. Anytime somebody comes to my house and says, do you have a chainsaw? I'm like, yeah, and I'll run it for you too.
There you go. All right, we always give a goodie bag. This is Aldi. And I didn't have time to sharpen
Listen,
our logo.
I am ecstatic because I just learned about Aldi. Honestly, it was the first time I've gone in this summer and I love it.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Yeah,
awesome.
You got it. You saved some major bucks at Aldi.
Oh, yes.
And they got some really,
Are they a sponsor?
they are not a sponsor.
They're not a sponsor. We got our tomato soup. Nice.
Yeah, that's for like a fall day where it's cold and rainy and you just want to come
Crank
in.
out some miles, get some soup
Yep.
in you
Got
afterwards.
some saltines with those.
Oh, yeah. And then we got a magnet, lawn Wranglers.
Got to put that in your office there, Taylor.
I will put it in my
You
office.
counsel them kiosks.
All my students will look at it and say, what's that? And I'll forward them the podcast.
There you go.
All right, it looks like we got a jersey.
Yeah.
Nice.
And that was done by...
That's by the sponsor.
Our sponsor, yeah,
Yeah.
Alpha and Aloha Design. Shout out to Jeff Lewis. Again, Alpha Aloha Design, you can find them on Instagram and Facebook. They do it all. So,
Appreciate it.
Taylor, this is awesome.
Absolutely.
Been wanting to get you on here and love what you do. Your inspiration in the running community, and best of luck to you in the fall racing season. I'll see you at Akron.
I will,
sure I'll
maybe
be
I'll,
on.
maybe I'll wear this and confuse you all during the relay.
There you go. I'm on an old man relay team, so our goal is to beat you.
What time are you looking
We
to
laid
run?
down at 2:47 last year, so I don't know what that pace
All right,
is.
looks like I got to get back to work then.
Akron is grind. That is a tough one.
Blinded by the light, wrapped up like a douche, another runner in the night.